On Bike Rebellion this week, I spoke to Chris Roberts. Chris is a retired scientist, the co-lead of the 350.org transportation team here in San Diego, and an avid transportation cyclist. In this conversation, we talk about climate change, making time for bicycle transportation, and how we can be more effective advocates and volunteers. We talk about the current realities of San Diego politics and how culture wars and short-term thinking influence policymaking and infrastructure development here in San Diego. We met with Chris on June 4th, 2025 on Sunset Cliffs with the Pacific coastline as our backdrop. Enjoy. All right, welcome to Bike Rebellion. This week we're speaking to Christopher Roberts, who is the 350 transportation team lead. And I'll just have you introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Chris Roberts,
Yep.
co-lead of the transportation team at San Diego 350. And San Diego 350 is a climate justice, climate action organization. And in the transportation team, our goal is to lower greenhouse gas emissions to lessen the effects of climate change. And we center underserved communities where the effects of climate change are felt the most. So that's my role as a volunteer. And so, yeah, I've lived in San Diego area now, or San Diego for 6 years. I live in Carmel Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little bit of background, I'm originally from Iowa. I moved to Oregon in the early 1980s to go to graduate school. I got a PhD in biology. I stayed on for a while. I met my wife then, and then we had our first child. We got married, had our first child, then moved to Seattle. So 10 years in Oregon, and then we lived 15 years in Seattle, and we really loved Seattle a lot. And Seattle was a big biking community. I really started biking every day when I was in Oregon, but then continued that in Seattle. Got my first road bike about 25 years ago, and we had our second child. And I was in the biopharmaceutical industry in drug discovery research, and working for a large company. They closed our research site, and my job moved to Boston. So we up and moved to Boston because of my job.
Yeah.
And so we lived there 10 years. And
I hope they were paying you properly.
Yeah, and it was all very good. And Boston was a fantastic place to live. Very cold in the winter, but incredible biking. And I became super avid biker in Boston. I started biking 10,000 miles a year there. But then 6 years ago, I went to work for another company who moved me out here, and only worked there 3 years, and then worked for another company for another year, then retired about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So, and I am, one thing that defines me as a person is I bicycle every day, pretty much every single day without fail. And since I bike 10,000 miles a year, I have to bike about 30 miles a day. Yeah. So I bike a lot.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much.
Those are some pretty solid numbers. Like I bike a lot, but I'm pretty sure I don't do 10,000 miles a year. But I try to ride pretty much every day. So you started cycling heavily when you were in Oregon and then Seattle and continued that. So the cityscape, do you think that made it easier for you or really inspired you to do that at the time? And the infrastructure available was obviously a big driver of your path, sort of.
Yeah. Eugene had very good bike infrastructure for the time. But it's a relatively small city. And then we moved to Seattle, and Seattle's infrastructure. I mean, I just, when it was something, the thing about bike commuting is it has to be something that's possible. Like the distance can't be too far.
Right.
And we were always our company moved to a place where about 25 years ago, it was relatively easy to commute by bike. Mm-hmm. The infrastructure wasn't completely safe. I got into a collision 20 years ago and broke my collarbone commuting to work. And that's the kind of thing that happens if you're biking and you don't have really safe bike infrastructure. That's something we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But it was good enough, and I'm really it's gotten much better in Seattle. Then we moved to Boston, and the roads in the Boston area are destroyed. They're bombed out. I mean, they're incredibly bad.
More so than here.
Oh, so much worse than here.
Okay.
Probably because of the weather, the effects of all the weather.
Yeah.
But I loved biking in Boston. For 6 months of the year, it was absolutely gorgeous. Then for 5 months of the year, it's really cold and all that.
Yeah,
but I've still biked every day.
The chemicals they put on the roads there in the winter will tear your bike up too, right?
Salt.
Yeah, the salt and the de-icers.
Exactly. But and then San Diego, I think that the infrastructure is similar. San Diego is a bit behind. But San Diego has the benefit of really good weather. I think the drivers are the same everywhere.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. I find drivers maybe on the East Coast to be more aggressive, and I find the drivers out here to maybe be more just not conscious of their surroundings a lot of the time.
That's fair.
But yeah. So why do you bike? What are your reasons? At the core of that.
Yeah. So the first reason is that I enjoy it so much, and I oftentimes think when I get on my bike and I just start rolling, I feel like a kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just that inherent feeling of freedom when you start rolling. You just start rolling.
Even if you're going to work, like when you first roll, you're smiling or something.
Exactly. So it's really good for your mental health and breathing fresh air. And when I was in Boston, I never skied, but I'd get outside in the cold winter and be biking. And in Boston, they'd salt the roads and plow them, so you could bike. It was just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So number one reason is health. Number two is for transportation. So I bike all the time. We have a car. My wife drives our car, and so. But I think even if I think I could get along without a car, even where I live in Carmel Valley.
Yeah.
One reason we moved to Carmel Valley was that I was working close to there, so it was a 9-mile commute up Torrey Pines every day along the ocean.
Yep.
At Torrey Pines State Beach, which is gorgeous. So
that's where my girlfriend works too. She's in that business.
Exactly. So it's good for your health, including mental health, and then for transportation, for just getting around, and then for the environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I take it really personally. So I'm this is an oxymoron, but I'm a young boomer, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
boomers are old. We're all old, but I'm on the young side.
Yeah.
And we're leaving.
I would have guessed Gen X.
I'm 61, born in 61, I'm 64 years old.
Well, yeah.
So we're leaving. Our generation is leaving the planet much worse off than we got it.
Yeah.
No question. And I take that personally, and that's what motivates me to want to try to do better and try. That's why I'm an advocate and work with SD350, and that's one of the motivating reasons for biking all the time. And it all kind of rolls together,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. The environmental as an angle of it is super important to me, and that's kind of how we met, obviously. But any little victories that we can make, I think, are important. But there's an awareness that needs to happen before real serious change can happen. And my generation, for example, just seems unconscious of a lot of climate change, because they're still at a stage in their life where they're raising their kids and they're trying to put food on the table and pay their bills and retire, hopefully someday. And, my friends, by and large, are largely checked out to it, which is it's disappointing and hard to watch. Hopefully, when we sort of age out of this stage, we'll get a little more serious about it. But that's been an observation that I've made.
Well, with respect to incorporating it into your just daily existence, I mean, you are a great example of somebody who's worked it into your career.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool, because there's lots of ways to do what you're doing, and it's an unusual way to go about it by using a cargo bike.
Well, do what you love, really, and that's like the next thing that I wanted to ask you, because doing as many miles as you do, and using that for most of your transportation, I've only ever seen you on a road bike. Is that what you ride all the time? And you're just, you know, do you have bags or any sort of cargo apparatus?
No. I have 3 road bikes, but I have I've as commuter bike, I've ridden mountain bikes in the past. Now I have a Canyon Grizzle 1 by gravel bike that I have a rack on, and I use that as a commute bike. And if I go to the Trader Joe's to buy stuff, I can haul my groceries in my Ortlieb packs.
And you're hardcore and full acoustic still. You don't have any electric bikes at this point.
No, but my wife has a fantastic e-assist Specialized.
Okay.
Really nice.
Yeah.
And those are game changing in
Well, you
so
guys
many
can ride
ways.
together comfortably probably now, right?
We can. We don't as much as we both wish we would, but we can. And I was just in Brookline, where there's lots of young people, including parents. Saw so many parents with 2 kids, 1 or 2 kids on their e-bike, taking them to school. Of course, you see that here as well.
Yep.
And it's absolutely game changing. And that's one area of where our state legislatures in the area have worked hard on legislation to improve the safety of e-bikes. So, but anyway, yeah, I think for me, I don't really like getting dirty, and I just feel comfortable riding on the road, and I like chalking up the miles. And you know, when you gravel riding and mountain bike riding is fun, but you know,
it can get pretty dirty. Yeah.
So but I kind of prefer riding on the road.
Yeah.
What I usually do is I ride from Carmel Valley down to Cabrillo, or go by Sunset Cliffs down to Cabrillo, and then back up, and I go up to Oceanside and ride the bike path in. And I do a dozen or so centuries a year, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm really into riding long
Yeah,
distance.
you got the miles. You're doing.
And
I
I've gotten really into birding, so I carry binoculars in my jersey pocket and stop and look at birds.
So that sort of works us into sort of the advantages of life by bike. You know, that the health, obviously, the mental and physical health is very, very important. The fact that you can bird watch while you're doing it is obviously.
You literally can do it while you're doing it, but you got to watch out.
Yeah.
One time I was looking at pelicans in the Cardiff in Encinitas, and they have bollards, concrete barrier, a bike path, and I almost ran right into it rolling down the hill. So best to stop and look at the birds.
Do you have any other sort of advantages that you take advantage of every day that, you know, other than the health benefits? I mean, there are so many, but any that really stand out to you?
Benefits from biking.
Yeah. Be it financial or you know, community.
Well, no, pretty much. You know, I when I retired, I started. I don't really know how to answer the question. I'll just throw out that I got into swimming with this master's group. I'm not very good swimmer.
Okay.
But I really enjoy. So I bike up to Torrey Pines area, up to Scripps, where they have an outdoor pool.
Okay.
And the combination of biking there and then doing this really intense swim workout, and then not having to get back to work, whereas all of the other swimmers are younger than me and have to go to work. And I sit out by the pool and have my lunch, and then I look at my phone and take care of some business, and then ride home. And then my wife is wondering why I'm eating lunch at 3:00 in the afternoon. But I mean, it's a great lifestyle.
It's a great workout, and I'll tell you, I see a lot of people riding or driving their cars to the you know, riding gyms, and where you know, they work out in various ways. And I work out at a gym occasionally, but it's certainly not as big a part of my life as just, you know, miles in the saddle, and it is a full body workout, core exercise, legs and up.
It is. It's good to. As an older person, I need to keep. I also lift weights, and it's important to diversify, because just rolling along, it is a workout for sure, and it's good for your health. But the cardiovascular workout from swimming is also really
your
nice.
hips oftentimes my hips anyway, when I do a lot of riding and don't do my proper stretching and stuff, my hips pay for that.
I should also say in 2021 and 22 I had double knee replacement. I had the left one in 21 and the right one in 22 from osteoarthritis.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was able to ride over 10,000 miles a year with really bad knees.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Low impact.
It's really low, and it's
Yeah.
really good for your knees. And then I had the knee replacements, and it hasn't been any problem at all.
That's great.
And that's another great thing about bicycling is, it's just super low impact and good
Yeah.
for elderly people like me. So.
Yeah. Well, it's and it doesn't sound like you're going to have anything for like the disadvantages or the sacrifices of
Well,
life
one
by
thing is,
bike.
I was thinking about that. Well, I cycle to everything,
Mhm.
and it just takes longer.
Yeah.
But you just work it into your schedule.
Yeah, you just budget time.
And then luckily, the trolley stops, 8 miles short of where I live, but I can cycle up to the trolley and jump on and take it downtown. But it takes longer, and you have to fix flats.
I wish it ran a little later, the trolley. That would be nice for going to events and stuff.
So a real problem is that there's not enough money. It's a crisis throughout the state of California. All of the big transit centers are in dire need of funding, and so there's a movement to try to get the state legislature to put $2 billion towards transit to rescue BART and the LA Transit Center and Sacramento and San Diego. And so the final budget will get done at the end of June or maybe in July. And so with some other colleagues and with folks up in the Sacramento area, we're going to be pushing in June to try to get people to contact their legislatures. And so we're going to do some actions. There might be some
funding transit.
For funding transit. I mean, because of the pandemic, it's a crisis. So MTS, which of course runs the trolley and the bus system and everything, they're almost certainly going to put a sales tax on the city of San Diego ballot in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably pass because the reason Measure G failed in the previous election is it's countywide.
Mm-hmm.
And the North County people all voted against it.
Right.
Because they live a long ways away and they drive and they don't want it. Right?
They don't want.
But in the city of San Diego, it has a good chance of passing, and that'll be really important. But still, it would be really great. So that's something that I'm trying to motivate our team to get involved with. And there are actions that we might be doing. So we'll see about that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Is a lot of transit in San Diego, like the MTS buses are bike compatible. The trolley is bike compatible, but not if you have a cargo bike, to my knowledge, and fat tire bikes.
I think if you can get them on, you're okay, right? You just have to get them on.
Yeah. Well,
because you'll see people get on with big bikes.
Yeah.
I've seen people get on with big bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's there to tell you can't do it.
Well, I've been given a hard time on the Surfliner, but it was a big bike.
Oh, well, that doesn't seem right. Why would that be?
It's just a space thing.
Yeah, that does not seem right. I know it does get crowded.
Yeah, it certainly does.
That just doesn't seem right. I know you're at the mercy of whoever the staff are that you're dealing with, right?
Right. Cool. So you obviously belong to, are the lead of the transportation team at 350. Do you have any other sort of clubs or rides or organizations that you're up to that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I ride with a fantastic bike club called the Velonuts that rides way up north, out of Forest Ranch. We used to ride out of Carmel Valley at the Moment Bike Shop, but that closed. So a lot of the riders are up there in that sort of Scripps Ranch, Forest Ranch, Rancho Casquitos area. And so I live 10 miles from there. So I don't get to go with them as much as I used to, but when I moved here, I biked with them almost every Saturday. So every Saturday at 7:15, they do a 50-mile ride. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, really early at 5:30 in the morning, they do an intense 25-mile ride.
Okay.
And the 50-mile ride on Saturday is sort of a combo fast to medium speed ride. I'm more on the medium side.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a chill ride. Then they have a chill ride that's just 35 miles. They go from Forest Ranch over to the coast, down and out the 56 bike path. And so the Velonuts is there's lots of bike clubs.
Yeah.
And since it was close to where I lived, I got hooked up with Velonuts, and I love those guys.
And did you find them through Moment, or did you find them online?
I had a work colleague.
Okay.
And they get 20 to 30 riders every weekend. It's great.
That's
so
cool.
that's my
Your tribe.
my bike club. Yeah, and then I also volunteer for Planned Parenthood, so
Cool.
I'm politically active with them. But most of my work is San Diego 350
Yeah.
and transportation. And the big thing that we really try to promote is when we get new volunteers who are busy. I worked for until I was 63 or 62, and I never did it. I just didn't do any volunteer work at all. But
Yeah.
I consumed news all the time, but didn't do anything.
You were aware.
I was aware and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start volunteering, you realize with 10 minutes of time to read about an issue and then make a call at just the right moment, but you have to know. So what we try to do is provide information to people about there's a critical issue that's happening. This is the issue.
Yeah.
And we're on this side. And so we want to if we make public comments at the meeting, you can have an impact. And they listen to their constituents.
Yeah.
And you can affect public policy. That's what San Diego 350 on the public policy side, that's what we're all about. We have a legislative team and we work on some legislation, but that's mostly a separate team. They work mostly with local politicians and with Sacramento. And then we work on the local transportation issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I most of my time is with San Diego 350.
It's a great organization, and it's been really interesting to sort of watch it grow over the years, because I lost track of it at one point, and then I sent for a business reason I sent Bill McKibben a email.
Yeah.
And he actually responded and sent me like this nice email, and we had like this nice exchange. And I'm like, Bill McKibben, it was absolutely an amazing thing. But
That's great.
yeah, it's a wonderful organization that does a lot of good work. And I think the principles of it, a lot of times these organizations, as they grow, they get very bureaucratic and technical, and in some way 350 has kept all of that lubricated and
right.
running properly.
Yeah, that's right. One really nice thing about 350 is it's not top down. In fact, there's loose associations amongst the California 350s.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some joint meetings. In fact, I should probably get involved with more of those. But a great thing about San Diego 350, one of the main things that we work on is to train the future climate justice warriors with the youth for climate and the Youth v Oil. Middle school and high school kids are incredible. They're incredible when they meet with legislators. And when a young person who's in high school is telling you that their future's in question.
Yeah,
it's just hard to know what it's going to be like when every single year is hotter than the year before. Right? Yeah. So anyway, I really like.
Yeah, at the Unite for Climate rally, I've had a lot of contact with actually Youth for Climate specifically, and they are fired up, and they're gonna do what's necessary, I think, which is a great thing. So let's get into infrastructure a little bit. This is a lot of, I've had a certain amount of contact with Sandag and Bike Coalition and Bike SD, and I've gone to Sandag meetings and made various public comment. And did I ever feel heard or really and to keep doing that takes a certain type of person, and I guess that you have those qualities where you're able to endure that sort of thing. But I pretty early got exhausted by it.
Sure.
How do you sort of manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So since the pandemic, the public meetings have become problematic.
Yeah.
And this has been well vetted.
Just the loud minority sort of thing?
Well, the exact same people speak at every public comment multiple times, every meeting, at all Sandag meetings and all County Board of Supervisors meetings, and oftentimes at City of San Diego City Council meetings. And they take up the full time every time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times some of the people will say vile things to everybody on the dais, the elected officials, the staff. All of those people are working and trying to get work done, trying to move through the business. And to hear shocking things said to people.
And these are like right-wing nut job sort of thing, or what are we talking about?
I'd say mostly they're right wing. They're very conspiratorial.
Yeah.
And but anyway, the point is that listening to that is a waste of time.
Yeah.
There's under no circumstances is that a good use of anybody's time, especially the people who on the dais who have to listen to the exact same people every meeting, multiple times a meeting. So it turns out we attend SANDAG meetings and County Board of Supervisors meetings when it's important. And sometimes it's important just to show up. So back in September, there was a vote on the County Board of Supervisors endorsing for the county land use plan. And this is a complicated issue, but it has to do with VMT, vehicle miles traveled, and implementation of that in the county land use plan. The San Diego Sierra Club worked really hard, many hours on an alternative plan based on some of the legal challenges that basically said we can implement the VMT strategy to try to have a land use policy that encourages building developments in low VMT areas. Specifically for the 18 cities in the county, they drew out lines on the map of regions with close in to all of those 18 communities that are relatively low VMT. Now, if you're all the way up in Fallbrook, it's not going to be very low VMT because most of the jobs are somewhere else. But still, they defined those areas on all of those spaces. So not only are they low VMT, but they're fire safe in that they're relatively low risk for fire, and you'd be able to get fire insurance.
Yep.
Okay, so this is right in the strike zone of what we work on.
Yep.
We fully support that. They call it the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative to the county climate action plan. And so we attended that meeting, right? And that was a big one, and it passed 3-2. Now, one of the people who voted for it's not resigned from the board. So now there's an open election, and it's on July 1st. And we don't endorse political candidates, but one candidate is for that VMT efficient plan, trying to minimize VMT, and the other candidate is absolutely against it.
Right.
And if that other person wins, then that's out the window. And then we'll have urban sprawl, we'll have Alpine will grow significantly, right? Mm-hmm. And so then we'll have tons of people down in Alpine driving wherever the heck they want. And we don't want that. I don't think anybody looks at urban sprawl and says, wow, we should have a lot more of that, right? We like the idea of infill development, hopefully close to transit centers, right?
It seems like we're at sort of an inflection point where it's very it's polarized, obviously, but we're either going to go hard one way or hard the other. And it's not really been determined.
Some of the people against VMT will refer to it as a vehicle mile tax. And that's not what it is. It's vehicle miles traveled. It has to do with where you build housing. But people think of it as you're taxing me for driving my car. So the road use charge is a whole other issue, which makes all the sense in the world. If you get in your car and drive, if you drive an electric car, you're not paying gas tax. So road use charge is a variation on that is what's commonly used throughout the world, right? Mm-hmm. We don't use that here, and we should, right? Yeah. But that's a hot button issue. They decided to not do that several years ago. That issue is going to come around again, but they the side that's against it will sort of try to say that VMT is a road use charge, which it's not. Right. It's just it just has to do with. VMT is relevant to where you're going to build housing. And if you build housing in the unincorporated area of the county, in a high VMT area, then every unit you build up there, you have to pay money. And where does that money go to? The money goes to VMT mitigation. Right. So this is really interesting. At the last SANDAG meeting, the board meeting, they talked about SANDAG developed different VMT mitigation strategies. So if somebody's paying fees because there's an area where there's housing that's high VMT, okay, what's that money going to be used for? There are different models, but one thing it could be used for would be to build infrastructure. Yeah, transit. Like bike infrastructure.
Yeah, bike infrastructure, and transit, trains.
Somebody from up North County who's against VMT said, I never see anybody riding their bike. So why in the world would we take VMT fees and build bike infrastructure? Nobody rides their bike.
Right.
And you want to say, that's what the horse and buggy would have said about making roads for cars.
Wow.
You know what I mean? If you build bike infrastructure, it's there forever.
Yeah.
And if you keep building it and keep building, then the bike infrastructure gets better and better. And eventually more and more people will use it, right? But if you have to start somewhere, and so that's some of the money that comes in is for VMT mitigation could go for that, or there's other ways it could be used. But generally the idea is, there's a stick. If you build out in the unincorporated area, you're going to pay more money.
Yeah.
Because you're going to cause lots of problems. You're going to put a lot more carbon in the atmosphere. You're going to exacerbate global warming. So that has a cost to society. So this is helping to prevent that.
Yeah.
And encouraging infill development, which is what we want.
Right. And the infrastructure that's necessary to develop places, even now in low VMT areas, really don't have sufficient infrastructure in San Diego, at least in my opinion. And that's why we need, bike lanes, trains specifically are something that I like to talk about, long-term thinking versus short-term thinking with microtransit and buses and things of that nature.
Well, here, something that I really wanted to bring up in our chat is very short-term thinking, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that is that in the fiscal year 26 City of San Diego budget, since Measure E didn't pass, and there was no campaign saying if you don't vote for Measure E, it's draconian city. We're going to slash and burn everything. That's essentially what the budget is. We're closing sports leagues.
Yeah.
You're closing Lake Murray during the week. You can only go to Lake Murray on the weekend.
Yeah.
I mean,
libraries.
And one of the things that's been put in the budget for the last 10 years solid has come from the Vision Zero Coalition, which is Circulate San Diego, Bike SD, the Bike Coalition, but importantly, Families for Safe Streets in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right, which I got to know those folks a year ago when they had a rally around fixing the Fatal 15 intersections. So this is the kind of thing, this is really important to the transportation team because we want to encourage mass transit. And the first thing you have to do to use mass transit, when you're leaving your house and you want to go somewhere, you have to think, okay, I want to go somewhere and I'm not going to drive my car. So I have to do something other than drive my car. So I have to walk someplace or I'm going to bike someplace.
Or bike.
And I don't want to die. And so it has to be safe. And so I like to say that safe streets are the first step in solving the last mile problem of how do you get from your house to the transit center, right? Or to the Walmart, which is in underserved communities is one of the most frequent places people go to when they leave their house. And so fixing the Fatal 15 intersections, Bike SD has done the statistical analysis of all the intersections in the city, and they can basically identify the most
fatal,
egregiously unsafe intersections. And they have rallies there it costs about $100,000 per intersection, roughly, to make them safe. So if you have 15 of them, that's $1.5 million. You do that every year for 10 years, and pretty soon you've fixed a lot of intersections, and there's a lot more to go. If you stop doing it, what's going to happen is some number of years later, somebody's going to die there at that intersection where you didn't do the work, because in 2025, we didn't think we had enough money to fund that in the next fiscal year. You have to do it. It's not it's just not optional, And so there's the Fix the Fatal 15. There's also, you can string together around schools, roads where there's multiple unsafe intersections in a row right in the vicinity of the school. So they call those unsafe corridors. So there's 6 unsafe corridors in the city, mostly in the underserved southern part of the city. And then the last one is, I love this one. AB 43 was passed as a state law that enabled communities to lower speed limits. Why would you need a law to lower the speed limit? Because the way speed limits get set are by engineers who do a traffic study, and they determine the 85th percentile of the distribution of speeds, and that's your speed limit. And so
not what's safe.
And so you'll have absurd situations where right next to us, right down the street from a school, there's a really fast speed limit. And so AB 43 was passed a couple years ago, but it takes money. You have to have some money. And then communities can lower speed limits. So those are the 3 priorities for the Vision Zero Coalition.
Yeah.
And so on Friday, there's a city council meeting where they're going to go through the budget again. And so Families for Safe Streets and Circulate and Bike SD and the Bike Coalition and other groups are rallying. And so we're going to make public comments at the meeting. And I'm going to attend by Zoom.
Yeah.
And I want to try to find out. I don't want to sit there for the whole meeting. So I want to figure out approximately when in the meeting I need to be ready to make my comment. But that's what we want to do. We go into those meetings like you started to bring up a long time ago about Sandag. That is a large time commitment. And mostly you're just going to be sitting there. And a lot of the time you're going to be listening to things aren't relevant to your issue or, crazy people making absurd comments and stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can make an e-comment the night before and it goes into the public record. In fact, all the way up to the end of the meeting, you can make an e-comment, it gets added. If you submit the comment the day before, it gets handed to your elected official, or maybe to all of the attendees of the meeting before the meeting starts. So, and they count votes in support, votes opposed every time. And that's how you have an impact.
Yeah, I'm with you. Sandag seems to me, I don't understand how they run the infrastructure projects here in San Diego, because Sandag is sort of a management organization. They don't touch a shovel really. They contract out all the work. They don't own any like San Diego doesn't own any equipment, and certain cities this size have their own road crews and have their own systems of actually building, maintaining, designing, etc. And it seems to me like that would be the more reasonable way to invest in the community is to get the staff, get the equipment, and have that in-house in a city this size.
Yeah. So I'm really not an expert, and I have to say a lot of the information that I've consumed about Sandag has come from Voice of San Diego. And Voice of San Diego is an incredible job actually exposing corruption and weird practices. Dealings. And there's such a rich history of weird stuff. But it is a metropolitan planning organization. And so their job is to plan. And then rather than the city owning, I guess, the construction crews or whatever, they contract that stuff out.
Yep.
And there's been problems with how that gets done, how procurement works. In fact, at the most recent board of directors meetings, they talked about an audit of those procedures, and they reported back on that.
Yeah, I've read several articles about sort of the numbers and of where the money's going and how many people have gotten rich off of the city of San Diego road.
So what we feel in our team is that, and actually we have a team member was 25 years at Caltrans and really knows the people and he knew Mario Orso, the CEO of Sandag, for many years. And he's led me to believe that generally the staff, the leadership might be a problem, and the leadership can come and go. The staff generally, including the city planners and the engineers, I mean, we feel like they want to do good work, and they want to do what's right for the community, but they're going to do for the community and how do decisions get made at the board of directors. So a law was passed, which before my time at San Diego 350, there was a big push on, I think, AB 805, which indicated that at Sandag, when you have these 18 communities,
who all have different needs and different agendas.
Yeah. So they aren't all the same size, it turns out. San Diego has 42% of the population.
Right.
And so, but they only get one vote if you have an unweighted vote. So there was a law that passed that said you have to take an account of the population, and in some instances use a weighted vote. And it's at the discretion of, as I understand it, of the board of directors to make real decisions using a weighted vote. And that's what the previous CEO, who had lots of problems, unfortunately, was in favor of, right? But of course, the small communities hate that. But I mean, it is democratic, for goodness sakes, right? I mean, come on.
It's the way it has to be.
42%. If you divide up 100 votes and you have 42% of the population, you're going to get 42 votes. Okay, so anyway, whether or not to use the weighted or unweighted vote is critical, and usually their funding decisions use an unweighted vote, and so of course they're gonna downplay the needs of San Diego.
Well, I understand.
They don't use a weighted vote.
I understand that we need to have coordination among the surrounding communities, but I don't think that Poway or any other place should be making decisions about San Diego bike lanes, and they do right now.
They sure do.
And I find that disgusting.
Yeah, I do too. And Poway, by the way, doesn't have. Everybody's supposed to have by state law a climate action plan.
Yeah.
Poway hasn't gotten around to doing their climate action plan.
Right.
Which, so we have a new chair this year, Lisa Hebner from Mayor of Solana Beach, and she's relatively heads in the right
friendly.
place.
Yeah.
But they want everybody to get along at the board of directors meetings, and everybody gets along better if you use an unweighted vote. Shawnee Rivera really doesn't agree at all, right? But this is a long contentious issue. I'm not an expert on it, but I absolutely do not understand why they don't use a weighted vote all the time.
Yeah,
for goodness sakes, right?
So, you obviously do a lot of miles. What would, with doing 10,000 miles a year, the lay of the land, where the bicycle infrastructure is. So you probably only ride that. And even having all of that knowledge, how much of the bicycle or how much of the infrastructure that you ride on is safe as a percentage? Yeah.
So most of what I ride on, I should say a lot of what I ride on is class 1 bikeway, so dedicated bike lane, because I ride on the 56. I'm on Strava. I'm the local legend.
A lot of miles.
I have been a lot. But then a lot of it's not. A lot of it's regular class 2, where it's just a stripe on the side of the road.
Yeah.
The most unsafe place that I know of in San Diego that everybody knows is Pacific Highway between the city and Mission Bay, where Barnett Street comes in off of Point Loma.
Yep.
I mean, that's about as unsafe as any place you would ever bike, because the merging traffic's coming on at 50 mile an hour speed limit.
Yep.
and you're right between, and you're always, and so if I have time, I actually ride up to the Presidio, actually that is the worst place. And actually in the new comprehensive street manual, there was public comment on highlighting really unsafe places.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really unsafe place. I think if they fix that, there'd be a lot more traffic from North County down to the city. But if you live in the city of San Diego, that's kind of a North County problem, or you know what I mean? It's a problem, but the people that have to just move around the city, there's lots of intersections.
Both ends of the airport are pretty dangerous. All around the airport, there's really not sufficient infrastructure. It's dangerous at every corner. Like there's not a safe way around it, unfortunately.
When I'm there, I'm a tourist, so when I get down there, I'm always on the Embarcadero and trying to look at birds in the water. You're right. If you're on the roads, it's not great.
Yeah.
But I think that the infrastructure just constantly needs to be improved. And that's why when they fix up intersections it's really instructive to go to an unsafe intersection for a rally. I mean, we went in Sherman Heights, I think it's Sherman Heights, at 19th and Market last year for the rally. I couldn't go to the rally this year, but it was so unsafe. All we wanted to do was with the megaphone march around and say, we want safe streets, right? And it was so unsafe. And car drivers are at the light waiting. And my Families for Safe Streets friends have these large signs, and they can't get people to look up from their phones. They're stopped at the intersection looking at their phone. And you're supposed to have a walk, don't walk, flashing box on every corner. They don't have them. I mean, really bad infrastructure and if it's bad for pedestrians, where you can't see the crosswalk lines, it's degraded. It's just, San Diego should do much, much better.
I mean, it could be a world-class cycling city, but the way I see it, we have about 10% of the infrastructure that we need to be safe on the road, just so we don't die. And we are in need of 90%.
I was just at the UCP Transportation Expo I'm blanking on the person I spoke to. He'd be a great person to speak. He spoke about the bikeway on Cholas Creek, or Hoyas Creek, down to Bayshore Bikeway.
Yep.
And so they're looking for advocacy support to get continuing funding to make that continuous. Because if you're biking on the bike shore and then could get on the bike path and go all the way up east, way up into Encanto and all that, that would be not only great for a tourist like me, but for everyday people who have to get around. That's a sorely needed bike infrastructure place. So
yeah.
I'll find out who that is and recommend.
Yeah,
that
for
person.
sure. And we are sort of farming you for suggestions. I mean, this is about sort of getting different people's experience, getting suggestions,
well,
all
one
that
person
sort of thing.
From Families for Safe Streets, Michelle Gonzalez.
She was my last interview.
Oh, good. Okay. She's fantastic.
Yep.
And she's really a biker. She bikes all the time. She and I run into each other all the time. So.
Yeah, we met her in Coronado.
Oh, I haven't
seen
your last. Or maybe
it's just dropping. So,
that's really great.
You'll see it now. Cool.
No, but also Chloe from the Bike Coalition. She'd be great, and then Anar from Bike SD, and other members of those organizations. I mean, they're really SD350 is more into public policy. Our team more into public policy, but also the climate march was a big effort. And Measure G last year. I mean, that we really advocate for those kind of things. The regular, bike infrastructure and safe streets advocacy. The leaders are the Vision Zero Coalition. We're supporters. We're big supporters, but those folks are really doing the leading.
Yeah. Well, they need support, and 350 is putting up numbers that really nobody else is at this point in terms of activism, and it's great to see.
It's really fun, really fun.
Yeah, love it. All right.
This is just a carbon Cannondale Synapse it has Di2 shifters and disc brakes, and I actually bought it the day after I moved here in 2019, and I bought it at the Trek store down in Kearney Mesa. It was on sale.
Cool.
And it is a bomber, great bike. The frame's kind of too big for me, and then I'm an old school guy.
Do you keep track of like how many miles are on each bike, or is it?
I don't do that on
specific?
Strava. I don't do that on Strava. I do it on my calendar, and I don't know. It's not too bad. I don't know.
Nice.
It's mostly like 3,000 or 4,000 a year. And I've had it for 6 years now.
Cool.
And gradually, since I'm retired and I'm on a fixed income, as we say, I do more of the bike maintenance myself. Yeah. I was going to say, I always ride with a MIPS helmet.
Yeah, me too.
Because they're better for your head when you crash.
Yep. Very important to have a MIPS.
That's right. I always joke that you never see a helmet without the MIPS sticker on it. And it's like, if you peel it off, maybe it doesn't work anymore. But I think it probably does. And when I moved to San Diego during the pandemic, I started listening to headphones. And these Shocks headphones are really great. And these are ones that had been in the box and then repackaged, so they were on sale for $60. But when I'm riding with these things,
can you hear through them?
Yeah, but I can't hear the headphones if it's too windy or if the traffic's too heavy. The other thing about me is that when I go through an intersection, I stop listening to the headphones and I'm paying attention, and I miss what they're saying. I've never had any trouble with hearing the traffic going by, for goodness sakes.
Okay.
It's too loud. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
I have a little handlebar speaker, and I listen to podcasts and music too all the time.
The War on Cars is a favorite.
Yep.
And otherwise, and I use I like these Cyclo lights. I also have Night Rider lights.
Okay.
And the most important thing is that they're easy on, easy off, so that they won't get stolen.
Cool.
And then this is a Night Rider light, I think.
Yeah, I have that same light. Those are great too.
Those are great. And otherwise on my bikes, I mostly, it's real simple.
So all of us that do serious miles, we carry pumps. I'm sure in here there's a tube and some levers.
Yeah, patches.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do patches?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. And it's worth speaking to the tires. I always rode with gator skin Continental tires, but my younger son, the engineer, convinced me that these Continental 5000 Grand Prix 5000s are flat resistant and a lot lighter. So the rolling resistance is better.
Okay.
And it's key. You can tell how the wear by these two little impressions in the wheel. If you can see those two things, then you're not they probably have some tread on them.
Yeah, they're almost slicks though.
And the longer you leave your tires on, you're gonna get flats.
Yeah.
If you don't want to fix flats, then change your tires every once in a while. And these are 28s or 32s. These are 32 millimeter tires.
Yep.
And it's interesting that the pros, the tour pros, ride 28s now.
Yeah.
And they used to ride 23s.
Yeah.
And it's just better to be on, and it doesn't slow you down.
And you have a little more volume just to sort of, suck up the bumps.
Yeah. So now my younger son is really into he's an adventurer and he's big into bike packing. So he and my older son and we did a big 5-day trip in the Olympics of 350 miles and 30,000 feet of climbing or something like that. No, I can't remember, something like that.
Cool.
And but there you have
on big gravel or
gravel, logging roads and some
Cool.
highways, mix of highways and logging roads and some hiking trails, and really intense.
Yeah.
So, and I had a light bike. I have a Cannondale Super X cyclocross bike. So I had a seat pack and a frame pack, but I didn't have the fork packs. I had the cup holder packs.
Yep.
But Danny's bike, my younger son, and my older son Nick's bikes, they had more packs and carried more stuff. But we carried everything. It's ultra light. So, you take very, very few, as little stuff as you can possibly take, but you take a stove and your food and it is a riot.
You taking water filters or are you taking water?
Yes. No, filter, yeah. No, and so Danny's done a lot of this. And so that was a really good trip. We left Seattle, went up into the Olympics and came back out. And then last year we did a 6-day, 500-mile ride from Seattle up into the Cascades and then down to Oregon and over to Portland. Wow. And again, my bike wasn't as heavy as Danny or his girlfriend Ashley's, but
dude, he's an adventurer. That was super
fun.
Something, man.
And I gotta say, Danny. They're assisting me to do because I'm a senior citizen.
Right. They carry the food, and you just have to carry your sleep accoutrements.
That's right.
Is that the deal?
So Danny. So my younger guy, he biked all the streets in Seattle using the Wanderer app.
Yeah.
And that took him 14 months all in. But then he got into kayaking. And so he's come up with a way of hiking with pulling the kayak with it on a trailer and hitched to his belt. And then he puts his backpack inside the kayak. And then he can kayak and get out and pull the kayak along and then put the kayak back in the water. And then he's done it with his bike. So he has a rack on one of his bikes.
Yeah.
And so then he can bike. And when he gets to the water, he takes the wheels off the bike and bungee cords the bike and the wheels on top of the kayak, and with his backpack inside, and he puts the trailer on top, and he kayaks like across the Puget Sound.
Sounds like a trip.
Yeah, he's really an adventurer that way. So he mostly just helps me go along with him.
That's cool.
And that kind of kayaking, biking, hiking thing, that's a game changer. But boy, when you put all that stuff in your kayak and you get it on the trailer and try to pull it with your bike,
it's hard. Heavy. Yeah.
Well, you would know.
and so this is your security system right now. So
one thing I wanted to say about that. No, I just wasn't sure. This is a $10 whatever cheap lock, but if you want to keep honest people honest, this works, right?
Yeah.
And if you're just running into a store and coming out and for a minute you can't watch your bike, this will work. But I wanted to tell a story when on election night, I went to an event down in National City, and I locked this bike with a U-lock to a sign post right outside of the front entryway into the place where the party was. So I had a long U-lock, 9 inches, and I could get it's a skinny, it's like a stop sign. Yeah. With the wheel and the frame. And I was inside for 2 hours. I came out and I was going to go to a different party. And I took my U-lock off, and the front wheel just fell out because somebody had taken the axle out and tried to steal the wheel. But they couldn't because it was locked. And so luckily for me, they just dropped the axle on the ground. chuck it in the alley or something. Because if they had, I wouldn't be able to ride home. And they didn't try to
They didn't see the lock in the first place. That's funny.
and they didn't try to steal the back wheel, which they could have taken right off.
Yeah.
So
Well, luckily there's stupid thieves out there.
That's a lesson. If you don't want your stuff to get stolen, that's a problem with bicycles. They just will all get stolen. Everything will get stolen.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it is. So anyway, other than that, that's one thing about car drivers. Generally, they can get their car stolen, but that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Bikes are so easy to steal, and especially in a place like Seattle, there are so many bike thieves. It's a problem here, but it's really a problem in Seattle.
Yeah, some cities are worse than others. Well, thank you so much, Chris. One question that I didn't ask that I think we alluded to in a lot of different ways was sort of how do we improve the situation if there's one thing we need to do to sort of improve or get more people on bikes?
Yeah. One thing, well, so I'm into advocacy.
Yeah.
And as in our democracy, the way you get stuff done is you have to have a voice. Yeah. And so we already talked about around bicycling, the members of the Vision Zero Coalition really, really work on this stuff. For example, how the street design manual was renewed and the city council reviewed it. And at a Vision Zero meeting, I mean, they went through, some of the members went through, I think it was the Bike SD member, went through in detail and found glaring mistakes.
Yeah.
For example, writing in the default width of the streets as like 11 or 12 feet, where it's really well established now. And there's this new book that came out, Death by Traffic Engineer, right?
Yeah.
Where there was really bad old data from the 50s or 40s that the wider the streets, the safer the street. And that's not the case.
Not true at all.
It's not true at all. And that was in the design manual. So they found that, and then they make the edits, and then they communicate it to the staff. And then that's how we make things better. Is you have somebody doing that. And then if you're in there, if you're sort of a extended member of their team, then they'll say, hey, we need you to come and have a voice and just make an e-comment or join a meeting by Zoom, make a public comment.
So,
and that's how I would answer it.
Okay. So advocacy, show up to meetings, make public comment.
In the old days, in the 80s, when I was in Eugene, Oregon, we'd go on critical mass bike rides.
I went on one last Friday.
Yeah. So that's fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun. I'm not saying that that's not fun. I don't know that that's the best way to advocate.
Right.
Because you're just, somebody can get hurt and you're pissing people off. But every time I did it, I had a blast. And actually, I would do it here, except I live way up north. It might be hard to go. Where did you go on the critical mass ride?
Downtown. Starts at the fountain in Balboa, but it went all through uptown and downtown.
What time?
Starts at 7:45. We roll
in the evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds really fun. I don't know if the trolley runs that late. I would do that.
It's a blast, man.
But
it's a good crew.
That's not nothing. That's definitely something because you're making a statement, right?
Yeah.
And you got to do something.
Yeah, do something. That's our advice. That's our advice.
And vote.
Yeah.
You got to vote for people who are going to, and we have state legislators that represent us who, for the most part, are really right on board. At least right here in San Diego.
Yeah, and I find like what you were saying about the sort of best practices. Those are ever changing too, and I've made a lot of public comment about what they explained as best practices that were completely unsafe and provably so. But that's another thing that we need to change. So
a good example is with e-bikes. Since e-bikes are new, there's state laws that are being written that are requiring that people need to, when you can ride 28 miles an hour, that's fast on a bike.
It is.
And you'll see young kids riding bikes, or like middle school kids.
Yeah, there need to be rules.
And they're riding on a fat tire bike going 25 miles an hour. They're not pedaling.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, not to be a geezer, but boy, in my day, nobody was doing that. You at least had to pedal.
Yeah. I like what the Europeans are up to. With the class 1 only and no throttles. And I think that's really where we're going to end up from a safety perspective. It's just safer.
E-bikes are so fantastic though.
Yeah.
It just is especially in hilly cities like San Diego.
Yeah.
They're the way of the future.
Cool. Well, all right, Chris.
Hey, man, that
Thanks
was a
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. All right.